Hi everyone, how are you tonight? My name's Diana Puglisi. I am the Curator of Education for Youth and Adult Programs at the Neuberger Museum. It's a pleasure to welcome you here tonight for Sharon Louden's Artist Talk, celebrating the Friends at 50 exhibition. This event is made possible by the Daniel P. Paduano and Janet W. Prindle Lecture Series, with generous support provided by ArtsWestchester, with support from the Westchester County Government. Sharon Louden is an artist, educator, advocate for artists, editor of Living and Sustaining a Creative Life series of books, and the artist director of the Chautauqua Visual Arts at Chautauqua Institution. Louden's work is held in major public and private collections, including the Neuberger Museum of Art, Whitney Museum of American Art, National Gallery of Art, Arkansas Art Center, Yale University Art Gallery, Weatherspoon Art Museum, and the Museum of Fine Arts, Houston. Now I'm going to take a breath. In 2021, Henry Art Gallery at the University of Washington in Seattle added a drawing to their collection. Her work has been exhibited in numerous venues, including the Aldrich Contemporary Art Museum, the Drawing Center, here at the Neuberger Museum of Art, Weisman Art Museum, Philbrook Museum of Art, National Gallery of Art, Birmingham Museum of Art, Weatherspoon Art Museum, and the Kemper Museum of Contemporary Art. In addition, she continues to produce site-specific, permanent public and private commissions across the country, including recent permanent installations completed in New York City, Oklahoma City, San Francisco, and Washington, D.C. Louden is also active on boards and committees of various not-for-profit art organizations and volunteers her time to artists to further their careers. Sharon is a consultant for Creative Capital in the Joan Mitchell Foundation. She is also a member of the Arts Advisory Board of the Carolyn Glasoe Bailey Foundation and on the Franconia Sculpture Parks Board of Trustees. She lives in Queens and works in DUMBO, Brooklyn, New York. Please join me in welcoming Sharon.
You are so nice. Thank you so much. Can I give you a hug? I'm vaccinated. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm so happy it's just us. Thank you so much. I want to thank Diana, and I want to thank Tracy, and I want to thank Dee Dee Young, who was the curator at the time when I was here, and Tom Collins, who is the director at that time, and all of the people who have supported me to be here. And oh my gosh, Diana, you are amazing. Like, it's fantastic. And Tracy puts up with me with very strong conversations. So I just wanted to first say, I love that you're here, and I would love to know more about you since we have like this wonderfully intimate group. It's so great. I wish in some ways if we weren't streaming, I would just have a group conversation, hang out. It would be so much more awesome. But I'm here to share my work with all of you because that's what I've been charged with. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. First, what I wanna do though is, can you see that? Okay. To celebrate the exhibition that we did here at the Neuberger, it was actually my first exhibition that was really like a survey, even though I hope I'm still young at 57, but I was younger then, and in 2006, and but it was like a way to culminate so many different media together. So did a big sort of like garden installation. You could see the yellowtails in the back, which Tracy was so kind to include in this exhibition here. And you can see an animation through there as well. And some 3-channel animations, and then drawings that were both borrowed and then brought from my studio, and paintings as well. And really, it was actually really important exhibition for me, and I'll say why, because the thing I realized at the Neuberger during it, I thought, what am I doing here when these are all things that are connecting? Why is space so important to me? And what I've realized over time is that creating space for me in different ways, whether it be sculpture, painting, drawing, animation. They're all connected. And also, I don't believe that media determines the work. Media serves the idea. So when I don't think about myself being a sculptor, painter, drawing, animator, I just think of myself as an artist in all the things I do. So what the Neuberger exhibition did for me was to connect all the media and for me to see it in order to make that assessment for myself. And it was just a powerful, wonderful, warm environment, and also a lot of people gathering together. And I think art, the most important thing for me at least, is art serving as a point of conversation. And to me, I always say that artists give to the well-being of others, no matter what they do. They walk in the door, they don't even have to say a word, because they have observations that may be different than others. And also they carry with them opinions, vulnerability that they're strong enough to share, and a different language that they can share, a visual language than others. I always say too that artists are a foundation for freedom of speech, because we exercise our freedom of speech in so many different ways, and some people may not understand it in a verbal way, but they may understand it in an intangible way. So anyway, just a couple more pictures so you can get a feel of it. It was named Character because at the time, these forms for me were anthropomorphic forms that then, once they came together, they became something else. Oh, look at that. Okay, this is my husband right there, and that's his email address. Okay, so now I'm gonna get to my website, my thing. Okay, so let's start this PowerPoint, and I promise it won't be boring, hopefully not. Let's see, slideshow, sorry. Okay. While you're presenting, okay, there we go. So this is my contact information. I always start with this because I always think that artists should always, to me, maybe not should be in the dictionary, but I recommend, and I always think it's so great that artists can be fully accessible. So I practice that. So here I'm going to just start by sharing with you just a survey of different media that makes up a language. So on the right-hand side, all the way onto your left, is a drawing. That's a painting. This is an installation, and that's a snapshot from a still from an animation. But as I said before, they all connect in some form. And the paintings and drawings, as minimal as they are, the geometry and what I see here is these squares or rectangles and gestures are points of architecture. And for me, it's about moving through that architecture that enables space and also enables a place, just even in the intangible or even in one's imagination. This is hanging in my studio right now. I also sometimes interject pieces with some familiar furniture, which this is a table, and actually just also position forms that are minimal, as I said, in gesture, but also invoke some kind of movement. This is also up in the studio right now. And then this is the first time I can announce this. So this painting is now a part of the collection of the National Gallery of Art. Very excited. That happened during the pandemic, thanks to Cheryl Newmark and Newmark Advisory. I live on long relationships. I used to show with her, and then she ended the gallery. Now she has this art advisory service, and because we love to exchange both of our creativity, I think every curator, director, anyone who's in the arts has a vision. Even if there's a mission here in the Neuberger, there's a vision. And that vision in harmony with an artist is the most fantastic thing. And taking that experience together, to me, is sort of far more important than having a solo show or a group show whatever. To me, it's the experience that adds to the life. And so Cheryl and I love to work together, and we enjoy each other's company. We learn from one another in that process. So Harry Cooper is the curator who brought this into the National Gallery of Art, and they collect in depth with my work. I think they have 1 or 2 or 3 drawings, and they have definitely 3 animations, and now they have a painting, and it's supposed to be on view soon. So that's part of Community, which was also a painting from 2013. For the artists who are listening in this stream, live stream, I want to just share that by saying that it's from 2013 and not 2021, it means that art lives beyond what's just made, and that I'm insistent on this, that just because something was just made, this is part of a whole vision and a life. And so I'm thrilled that this curator, Harry Cooper, who's amazing, and Cheryl Newmark could also see that, and see that this painting holds up on its own in 2013, but part of the vision. Okay, so now that's a little bit about the paintings and drawings, but I really want to get you, since the yellow tails, to me, just to give a context of the sculpture. And Diana, if you would mind just giving me a heads up when I'm talking too much, and you could just say done. So I'm just going to give you a sort of idea of how I work in the studio. I'm going to show you a few other things, and certainly if you have questions, just shout them out, because I love our wonderful group here. I love sculpture and sculptural materials because they evolve into other forms in the way that they're used, and then also I see them as a life themselves. So in creating space, it takes people, it takes forms, it takes, in this case, furniture and tall ceilings. It takes a lot of things. But what I'm most interested in are these sort of beings that make up the boundaries of where people can go and spend time in space. So again, another collaboration with this amazing curator, Mary Murray, at the Munson Williams Proctor Institute in Utica. And also, I often show and work with regional curators because I want to go into spaces where culture is different than where I am, and acknowledge that I'm a guest in those spaces, in those environments, and learn from those artists and those professionals in those environments. So I loved going to this museum. If you've never been, you've got to go. Great, great permanent collection. And so I had a 2-person show there, and she said, you know, she, as the person who has the vision, says, I'm going to give you this floor to be able to do an installation on site. I love doing on-site work because it's of the moment, can't ever be the same. So this was a piece that was called Merge, and I'm going to take you through this idea. So it started this way first, as the little crawly things made of aluminum that I got at Home Depot that's used for roofing. And then 6 years later, I did an installation at Project 4, which is a gallery in Washington, D.C., and thought, okay, these little forms that are anthropomorphic to me, that define these spaces, these forms to me have a life, and the life is different in each space. So today I'm wearing a double-breasted jacket, but if I'm in my studio, no way am I wearing this jacket. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to be a different person. So on that, then, I built this installation in Washington, D.C., and I started adding more and noticed that these little anthropomorphic forms in creating this space were coming together and evolving from me. Then in, I never can remember the year. Vince, what's the year we did this? 2011? 2011, we did a project for the Weisman Art Museum. It was actually a really important exhibition, temporary installation. And what we did was, this project, I blew it out. Because of my relationship with Diane Mullen, who's the curator then, and her giving me space and me giving her space, and working together all the way from the beginning of the budget and what the meaning of that budget is and where that money goes. I love talking about money for artists because artists don't hear it enough. To all the way to the end and how it benefits the community and all the way through the museum, every single person who worked on it. And so we blew it out. Over 400,000 of these little forms come together, and it created a massive environment, dense, but it wasn't that big. It was only about 3,200 square feet. And so what I love for me about this space is we built this piece inside a Frank Gehry museum. If you don't know who Frank Gehry is, he's an architect who has buildings all over the country and the world. And he uses a very shiny steel, I think, and aluminum. Maybe I'm almost positive I'm getting that wrong. But on the outside, it's very gestural. And so in the inside, I wanted to create this internal part of that that would then have a reflection, like an inside-outside of the museum. Just want to make sure this is on. Okay. So the idea, too, of this piece called Merge, I really loved the shadows and how the shadows were invoking drawing, too, and gesture. And so here's what I love to do in doing installations, too, because I have a privilege of showing in a museum. I have a privilege of showing as an artist. That privilege for me, when a museum has raised all this money for the budget, I give them, and my husband and I, Vincent Vallega, he's my project manager, and we go over what the reality is of the budget. Now, some artists would just say they would pay X number of dollars for people to work with them. We pay way over the standard of working with artists, because I believe that artists have to live on a living wage, have to be paid on a living wage. So we do take that amount of money as a way of not only being an activist or advocate for artists, but also doing the right thing, okay? So things are not gonna change in how artists are positioned or looked at in the world if we can't treat them like others, so financially or otherwise, to be equitable. So we hired these graduate students and paid them very well. From University of Minnesota. They taught me a ton about music, and then I taught them a lot about professional development, and then also just sharing experiences of other artists that I've observed. And we were 5 weeks on site. And you can see here, I positioned these strips of aluminum together like a drawing, and then they would put them together, and then we would place them up. Now, Merge, this continued in at the University of Connecticut, in Storrs, Connecticut, UConn. And this is also a permanent project. Well, that was temporary. This is a permanent project that evolved from that project. So each time I try to grow the piece. And the great thing about this piece is it's easy to maintain except for spitballs that keep getting into the piece. And so I wish them well. And the maintenance piece, take things out of it. It's funny. I think that's actually a compliment that they have a place for that. Then also I did a project at the Asheville Art Museum and started actually looking at the big sheets of aluminum. I should also say that this highly reflective aluminum, we get it from a broker in Canada. We can't seem to source it in the same way, the same material here in this country. It's actually, each sheet is about 4 pounds. Vince can probably answer this better, 24 by 96 inches, is that correct? Oh my God, 24 by 96 inches sheets, but when you put them up, they look massive because they're highly reflective. And I thought, wow, these pieces are also serving as a source of inclusivity. So when you put them up, you see yourself in the installation. So another thing I did was, I don't like that museums are not participatory. At this time, they weren't so much, and now they're much better. But I love that people can take pictures in museums and can share those pictures, but also use it as a form of conversation and getting to know people. So I have put up this thing saying, enjoy the installation. I gave them my Instagram, it was right there. Reach out to me and I'll I'll be in touch with you. And it was 2 years of this. And so we had a whole bunch of people. People love bling, and they love to see themselves and feel that they're part of it, just naturally. So people got married in the piece. I actually didn't like that. I mean, I was a little prickly, but then I got over very fast for love that this thing was so close to the installation, but that's okay, cool. And then this guy named Your Bud, I didn't write him back, actually, because I was a little afraid when I saw this. But I gave a talk one time, and I put this in here just to share too, because I never know who's in the audience. So I was in New Hampshire, and I gave a talk in New Hampshire at what was then New Hampshire Institute of Art. And somebody in the audience says, I know that guy. And I said to him, can you write him for me and tell him how I felt? Because I thought he was like a serial killer or something. I couldn't write him back. So she wrote him that, and then he wrote back during the talk. And I said, please apologize for my assumption by what he looks like. Certainly he must be a kind person. So then he wrote me back, and we started a conversation. Okay, and then we started doing, like, increasing the depth of these sheets. And this is actually what it looks like. There's no photoshopping here. That's my husband as the model. And this was at another regional important museum, the Tweed Museum in Duluth. For me, it doesn't really matter if a public from, let's say, New York or Los Angeles or Chicago can get there. It's more about that the work exists, and it's for where it is and making, hopefully, some impact. Every time I do a museum show, I love to do a talk. I love community engagement, and having the honor of having an exhibition, it far exceeds just the exhibition itself. That's what it looked like. And this is at University of Wyoming Art Museum. When I did a show with them, I partnered with the Wyoming Arts Council, and we visited 7 different cities across Wyoming and met artists in each of those cities. And then this is the last project I'll show in the sculpture. This is at Mayberry Bank, which is in Oklahoma City. That picture I took with my iPhone. This is not made up, I swear to God. Now people that go into a bank can see themselves, and actually it's not boring. So hopefully, at least I don't think it is. So I do a lot of private commissions, which I love doing because that means somebody's living with the work. So I always show this chart now. I think as artists, what's really important is how you select things. Hopefully artists can believe, and everybody here in the audience can believe, that artists come from abundance and not a deficit. And so if we come from abundance in so many ways that we think, operate, give, talk, whatever we do, every human being has abundance, but somehow society doesn't really view us that way at this point as much as I would like them to. So I always say to artists, so important to have like an idea of who do you want to have in your community? Who is the community for you? What does it mean to be community? To me, it's not just one art world. There's so many art worlds all over the world. And each one, often regional, has a opportunity to be able to share their work in the way that they wish. And that is freedom of speech. So I go by this chart a lot. So one thing that Diana went to, I just showed too, as far as community and sharing privilege, I had the opportunity to have a Marie Walsh-Sharp studio. Approximately, I think between 1,500 and 1,700 people apply every year, and only 17 people get it. And I thought, man, I gotta share this. So my closest friend, who is like my brother, is named Harag Vatanian. He is the editor-in-chief of Hyperallergic, but he's so much more than that. He's a writer, artist, and not to put that down, of course, that's such a big job. He founded Hyperallergic. But I said, for him as an artist, let's collaborate in our friendship. What's gonna be like to speak visually? So we created 600 square feet of 100% aluminum, a lot in the ceiling, but covered all over the floor. This aluminum is very expensive, so I was taking a big risk, but also had a lot of scraps to work with. And we created a space for us, but also for performance. I had never done performance before, and so he enabled me to walk through that and to have readings, and was very powerful. And then at my gallery at Signs and Symbols, you should totally visit in Lower East Side. We did a small exhibition that was, again, a conversation between us and built from that. Over 350 balloons were there, and every week I had somebody filling them up from my studio. And he curated, since he's also a curator and a critic, these old drawings in the back, again, having a statement that you don't just have to show the newest work. So, but another surprising thing happened, okay? So I promise this is gonna be entertaining, okay? I promise. So a influencer, I didn't even know what an influencer was. That's how like backwards I am, or behind in society. But an influencer came in, took a picture, posed. This is the influencer, took a picture, and he has hundreds of thousands of followers, I believe. Yes. And so what ended up happening was that he took a picture, and then people came in and they dressed for the piece. And for 6 weeks, not kidding and exaggerating, there was a line out the door with tripods dressed for this piece. It was unbelievable. In the press release, it says Sharon and her best friend. So then best friends came and took a picture together. And that was extraordinary. And you can see all the portraits on my website. Oftentimes, a lot of people came in who've never been in a gallery before. Mostly people of color, people who are outside of the art world. I'm not saying that people of color are outside the art world. I'm just saying people who don't know what white walls actually can do, and people who've never been to a gallery before. So when in fact, proof of this is, Mitra, the founder of Signs and Symbols and the director, she asked someone, do you want to sign a book? Are you all familiar, like when you go into a gallery, I don't know if anybody's familiar, you sign a book. Have you ever heard of that, like before you leave? And they said, why would we want to do that? And that was amazing. So for me, this is the best review I've ever gotten. Now, we got great reviews. We got a review in the New York Times for this exhibition. That was amazing. I guess I could just say it's a different kind of review because it came from people that were energized to be there and be in it, and it served its purpose. So I think the #1 key to sustaining creative life is community. And these are all these cohorts, wonderful artists that were artists in residence on my first year as the director of Chautauqua Visual Arts. And the kind of thing that I like to do in being community is speaking out on things that I have disagreements of. This one landed in Hyperallergic, where I said why arts colleges and universities should not, act like for-profit galleries. I was protesting about the, this idea of having an MFA art fair. And I was like, wow, that's going to eliminate people. It's not going to be fair if a school takes a percentage and then the alumni has to share that percentage when they already have debt. I mean, so many problems with it. So I spoke out about it. And then also I speak out about bad pay-to-play calls. So what I mean by that is if you don't know where the money's going for an artist, why can't we ask where money is, where it goes, and actually approve that before we actually put money into an exhibition? So I love pushing back, but it's taking a lot of risk. And for me as an artist, I just want to make it more equitable. I don't think there's anything wrong with charging things. I just want to know, and I want the art world, the one that I live near and is centered there, in my opinion, to actually be more transparent. I think it's only fair. So on that, I had a publisher who's in the audience when I was doing a panel called How to Make a Living With or Without a Dealer at the College Art Association in 2011. And and there were like 400 people there. It was crazy. And I just remember saying during that conversation, well, it's really great that you're here and it really sucks that you're here. Like that was so unbelievably commanding that people often, they would tell me, and still to this day, looking for a silver bullet. And there's no silver bullet to being an artist. There's no rules, really. There are rules that are under are understated, or that they're not stated at all in the lack of transparency, in my opinion. But why can't we be free to create and have these relationships and collaborate? So when the publisher came to me, she said, I want you to write a book. I was like, yeah, no, I don't know if I can write a book. But she said, what would you want to have on those bookshelves? I said, you know, I would really love to know how to sustain a life from the paths of artists, which I never see that on the bookshelves. So I went to great schools, but I graduated with a massive amount of debt because my parents didn't pay for my education. From that, my husband's a jazz musician, political activist, and we worked together. His brilliance, we started thinking about how we can pay off that debt. And I won't waste time here talking about it. We were able to pay it off in 10 years with a lot of creative thinking. That comes from being an artist. And so I said, I'm going to put generous people, 40 in the first book, 40 in the second book, about how they can share us and how they sustain their lives in the most simplest way. I had no idea how popular this book was going to be. I'd never edited a book. Before it got on the shelves, it sold out. It sold out 7 times. And now it's in its 7th printing. And it's sold in 24 countries, and I'm really proud of where it's gone. And unlike other anthologies, I split the measly profits, the royalties, with all the contributors. I send them checks every year, or through Vimeo, or through electronically. But for me, it's like, I'm gonna also give you your copyright because you own this essay. So in anthologies, that doesn't happen that often. So it's not a money-making venture. It's really about, let's make this more transparent. Because if I'm going to say something, then I got to do something about it. So it became a cult thing, actually. We did over 164 stops in 5 years all over the country. Here's some of the artists. Edgar Arsenault, I love him. He is an artist in Los Angeles, and I'll just have to go through this briefly. Sharon Butler, Bad at Sports, which is a wonderful podcast that's developed by Richard and Duncan. Duncan is in the book. Dina Haggag, who wrote one of the conclusions. At that time, she was a curator, the director and curator at the Contemporary Museum in Baltimore, which was really like a nomadic museum. And then she went on to be the director at USA, United States Artists, and now at the Mellon Foundation. Jean Shin, talk about badassery. I've known her for over 25 years, very generous. Austin Thomas, who created a space and still is so generous to other artists in sharing space. So the results of those book tours that my husband and I did, we did it through NYFA, New York Foundation of Arts. We really made this like a case study, and it was fully sustainable, including the first day where we paid for drinks for 18 contributors who came. And then physically sponsored by New York Foundation for the Arts, and we created a case study. Here are all the partners that we had. Some of these people came, like the Ford Foundation, through me, something what I love to do, which is cold calling. Not picking up the phone, but actually finding a fit and saying, I want to collaborate with you. So Darren Walker, the executive director, who I love, who's taught me so much, he gave me some seed money to then go out into the world to connect artists to other artists as a catalyst, to be able to create community in especially places who would not receive the kinds of culture and from different places and combine them together. So the tours were amazing. People got jobs from those tours. It was really like started out where people would have exchange on a panel, and Q&A would come in the form of like, what do you need and want? Asking the artist. And somebody in the audience would say, oh, I can do that for you. I can do that for you. I can do that for you. Oftentimes artists don't ask for help or find that fit. So we went all over the place. And we even went through 4 stops in Alaska. The NEA supported that as well. And I went to places like Eugene, Oregon, or in Baltimore, where a lot of shootings were happening. And then we went to the Aborigine country 6 hours outside of civilization, where we met a lot of Aboriginal artists. So we went everywhere. And right before the tour started, I went to Tel Aviv, and I've stayed in touch with almost all of the partners we worked with. They are my community. So one of the places we went to all 721 museum hotels all over the country. Now there's 8, I believe, that Alice is doing. And if I could see in the audience that people were like deers in headlights, I would ask questions. Like or ask people to ask me questions in that Q&A. What makes you feel most vulnerable as an artist? Some of these questions are very, very powerful. How can I cultivate a sense of confidence in myself on a day-to-day basis? What these questions say is what is wrong with the fact that artists can't feel good enough and that they have power enough that they ask these questions. That says a lot to nonprofit organizations, museums, and so many other people who are gatekeepers. So this was very powerful. We did this, somebody asked this at Pratt, how do you create generosity when no one around you is reciprocating it? It makes me so sad. What's tattooed on my arm is gratitude. And what I feel is generosity yields generosity. And the way to lead is through empathy, compassion, and also consideration of others, making space for others. Somebody said, I've been told I need to have a style and stick to be known. So that makes me crazy too. Artists create a language. It doesn't have to be a style like somebody else. And to be known. Where can artists get validation other than to be recognized in a source of power that has not been, let's say, excuse me, I'm spitting all over the computer. Let's say not a source of power that has been exclusionary to 99% of the artists. When being paid for a piece of work, how do you know you aren't being cheated? Because there's no transparency other than like a consignment note or a loan form that can say to artists, this is completely transparent. Now, artists can do a lot too. They cannot fall for, let's say, a dependency and be more aware of what they have. And I love this. This was written actually at Chautauqua. It says, artists must be relevant to their communities beyond their work. Absolutely, and we always have been. So something changed along the way, and I just am sort of not happy with that. So here's a result of the tours and advocacy. We created jobs, exhibition, certainly validation, which every human being needs, exchange and community building, and you can read through. We partner with venues, and through donations from individuals, grants from nonprofit organizations, Vincent and I raised over $400,000 to pay artists to go out into the world and share their knowledge. So what artists want is validation, permission, which they don't need. A lot of people who identify as women ask me for permission, drives me nuts. And then opportunities. And I think people can create their own opportunities. So keys to sustaining a creative life. All of these things we have found through this case study. And my feeling is that artists can create their own opportunities they have for their whole lives and create their own community. Now, just quickly to go through Chautauqua, which is another part of me being an artist, is directing this residency program to create a brave, not just a safe space, but a brave space for people to come who may not have had that privilege. And so for me to be able to make space for others, I chose a core group of lead faculty members who have multiple hats that they're undefinable. So they share with so many people. And on the left, that's Harag, Asana Lahi, Jean, Caleb Lindsay, oh my God, Alpesh Patel, and Rahale Filsufi. And then we have visiting artists such as Squeak Karmwath. She's amazing. This is Samia Bashir, and then Miguel Luciano. And for the first time, this is what academia can't do. And I applaud Chautauqua, because Chautauqua is a place for lifelong learning. I hired somebody who doesn't have a normal higher education experience. Jose Ariano is from the Homeboy project, Homeboy Industries. And Homeboy Industries is an organization started 32 years ago to not only empower, but to be able to integrate formerly incarcerated individuals in the world. He's one of the directors of that, who spent many years in prison, and he's coming to Chautauqua and going to be a faculty member. And somebody said to me at Chautauqua, well, what kind of art is he going to teach? I said, he's going to teach about integrating storytelling, how artists can integrate storytelling in society outside of these art worlds. It's a great place for convening, and a great place, this is what the studios look like at the end of the summer, and a great place for opportunity for artists to really experiment without judgment. This was the cohort like I showed in 2019, and I'm gonna end with that. I have new drawings and new work, although that doesn't really matter to me, but they're on my Instagram. And that is my husband, who is with me. We've known each other 44 years. And I think having a family member like that and acknowledging your community is so important to me. And here at Neuberger, you have a community here. And because of the community here, I was able to share and create this exhibition and come back here. And to me, I owe it in my life as an artist to continue to collaborate, because it's part of, for me, my policy and the way I look at life, just like in normal relationships of people who aren't necessarily in the art world. Okay, so here is my contact information, and I put Harag's information there because I mentioned him as a collaborator, and you can't really see the, I'm sorry, I thought you could see that there, but I can share the links at another time. And that's the end of my presentation, but I would love to sit on the stage and just answer any questions you might have. Oh, thanks. Thank you. What I'm gonna do is put this in the front so you can see. What? What's wrong? Oh yeah, isn't that nice? All right, I actually will stop this then. You know, I don't know, we have a problem with our display in the community. Isn't that a pretty picture of us? Okay, that's on my screensaver. Okay, does anybody have any questions? When do you sleep? Oh yeah, that's a good question. Can I sit down here? Oh, good. Thank you. I just did something to my knee, so I'm a little bit awkward, sorry. I get to be with all of you. Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay? Okay, I'm so loud. When do I sleep? I actually have problems sleeping, right. I just feel very fortunate to be alive, honestly. And, you know, Chris Rock had said in one of his stand-ups, Chris Rock said, there's a big difference between a career and a job, right? And I'm paraphrasing what he said, but I really learned from him this. A job is where you keep looking at the clock when you want to check out. A career is you never want to sleep. I never want to sleep. We're both night owls. We hate to go to sleep. It takes us like an hour and a half. I have to watch an owl cam to go to sleep. So it's like that's to answer your question. But thank you for. Are you an artist too?
No.
Oh.
But I just am enamored with all that you do. And
oh, thanks.
how it's filtered out into everything that you do.
Oh. Well, thank you. What's your name?
Carrie.
Carrie, nice to meet you. Carrie, thank you so much. Does anybody have any thoughts? Tracy!
So I saw the signs and symbols.
You did! Oh my God, I can't believe you saw that. Thank you.
I am proud afterward. And I have a question about the inflatable part. Like, I see that there were all the, you know, it had so much movement. And your work generally, the metal pieces have a lot of movement.
Well, thank you.
That addition of like the moving through the air.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more?
Oh my God, that's so great. That would probably only come from a museum director or curator, that question, which is great. Now I remember, I think I sent you a thank you note. I probably sent you a thank you note. Yeah, now I remember. Oh my God, I'm still grateful that you and Diana went there, so thank you. So grateful. I love the idea of opening a space. So the aluminum is really like the use of aluminum and glass is really, for me, having a dialogue with architecture. And oftentimes in the movement of space against a sort of rigid geometry in architecture provides this different conversation. And because those aluminum pieces just expand space, you know, that space was tiny, right? And then, oh yes, and then, sorry, that it is so, you know, it creates a bigger space that could include others, so it opens the door wider. So to have that sort of feeling of going up in the air keeps meaning it's expanding. And the gesture for me, all of my installations are so specific because it's where light is reflected. I forgot to say that light is a big partner in all of the work that I do. Even those yellow tails, the colors, it's that, and I was talking to Diane about this before, that monofilament actually comes out of a relationship with Andy Monofilament, who I visited with, this guy who's awesome. And he was like, why would you want to have monofilament? Because we got a whole bunch of black monofilament for a tender's piece at the Kemper. And he was like, why? But I'll do it with you. And then through that, we created a relationship. He never knew anything about art. I never knew anything about monofilament. And he's still on my mailing list. It's awesome. So I think that the idea of light and transparency and then beauty, there's beauty, but the other side of beauty is not so great. I think you have an ugliness and a beauty, but they stay on the same, in this way, same coin, or both sides of something. So I just think that for me is a big part of the use of that. And I hope you felt that a little bit. In the back, it was hard to feel that, but I want to share something with you all. So now that you've seen this and you saw it in person, there was one balloon that was still left that had lipstick on it. And it lasted the whole time. I couldn't believe it, even though each week we had them filled up. We kept the lipstick one. But the other thing is, Harag and I were thinking, God, we should have really had a camera here, because Mitra caught people making out in that back room. And we were really like flattered that they would want to be in a gallery and like have this private space that could be under the balloons. But then we were like, yeah, maybe not. But then we were like, maybe we should put a camera up there. So you never know what would happen. So it really changed the whole space. And I'm going to show with Mitra, and she said, I wonder what you guys are going to do. I don't know. We were thinking maybe to have like a food cart or so. I don't know what we're going to do. But I love the feeling and privilege, the opportunity. So thank you. Thank you.
I love the way your work, how you showed in this talk, expands, you know, starting from, often people who aren't artists don't realize that a small drawing can motivate another vision, and setting up a space, and then how that project grew, like a flock of birds.
Oh, wow.
And it really struck me as that, and you know, and how a sketch, when you push it the scale, can become something else. And
Thank you.
I think that's a beautiful thing to share.
That means so much to me. Hopefully they're immersive and inclusive. That's what I look for. What's your name? Barbara. I'm Sharon. You know, funny you mention a flock of birds. Vince is a birder, so maybe that's subconscious. I don't know. Yeah.
If students are listening on the live stream, what were you when you, where were you when you were in college? Where were
Great.
you minded? How long did you sort of evolve and get to this place? And obviously over time, but did you always have these inclinations to just really be so expansive? Or was that?
It's a great question. So I'm 57, and that's important because generations have changed, but I think some parts of the art world have gotten more conservative, actually, not in any partisan way, meaning more safe, you know? And at that time, I was at graduate school, I was at Yale University, which was a school that started by Joseph Albers. And I was painting a lot. That's what got me into that school. But I was frustrated and bored. Boredom, I think, is an amazing thing because you get to take risks and get off the couch if you're agitated. And having that boredom when I got out of school, I was like, I want to feel these things that I'm painting. And it enabled me to, like, I talked to my peers, somebody who does sculpture. I said, what kind of material? I mean, I took one sculpture class at School of the Art in Chicago, and I got a D, because I couldn't think outside of a two-dimension at that time. But then when I was ready, I started feeling that I needed, and then it just took off, because I started drawing, seeing in space, and I started seeing the boundaries of space visually, rather than literally, necessarily. And I started seeing rooms as flat canvases. I still see it that way today. For me, I was a very angry person when I went through graduate school, and it was a protective measure because that was a really tough place to be, but I loved it. I loved the assertiveness, the truth that was told, but I was trapped in a lot of ways. So it's with my community, but also because I didn't have any money, I started thinking differently, and I thought, gosh, what do I need and want? Those two questions I ask all the time. At the time, I couldn't afford a computer to get to the next place. And I love to file and organize. I have that OCD, which is greatly beneficial for me. So Vince can tell you, it goes all the way back to my great-grandfather, and love it. So I said, what's gonna be a good place for me to be at? Instead of thinking that an artist or myself, I have to take any job I can because that's, an artist won't get anything. That's not true. So I started thinking, who do I want to be around? What do I need? I need a computer, and I need to have a living. So I had $18,000 a year in 1991 to 92. I worked with this guy named Bill Schwinghammer, who's one of my closest friends now, all the way back now. I mean, love him to pieces, him and his husband. And again, relationships continuing to go. Sorry, I'm going on for a while, but I'll just say this one thing. That through that, I stayed overnight, not overnight, I stayed after work at night, used the computer to apply for other things to get me out of it. And then he's a lighting designer, so I was around creativity. And that, in combination of taking risks, as I wasn't under this sort of place of an institution, that enabled me to really grow from that. And then through many years of therapy, which is, especially in the last 10 years, has really helped me. And also, I want to be treated the way that, for me, I want people to be treated as I want to be treated. And also, I just don't like a lot of restrictions if I want to speak freely. And I have the ability to visually, and I just hate it seeing artists wait their whole life for a gallery that won't ever take them, and hopefully share with them that there's a lot more to that. Granted, I love galleries and museums because they have a lot of privilege in their real estate and in the privilege in the people who are so knowledgeable to be able to offer to a community many different things. And so I'm interested in the growth of those roles and how they're going to evolve, especially past the pandemic. Is this tough to hear, Tracy? Right.
With I recommend. And I have a serious problem with the word should.
Yeah, I do.
It really struck me.
It should be out of the dictionary, should.
That's what you said.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little? I mean, I feel like it ties to.
Totally. God, you are so smart. In cultural reciprocity, I have to take you both out to dinner. Cultural reciprocity, not an eye for an eye. I'm Sicilian, I know what that is. But cultural reciprocity in growing, and I'm so appreciative. I have so much gratitude. Yeah, I think should means it's a judgment. Or it's like, and a lot of artists ask me, and when I go on these tours, and then the work I do for Creative Capital, which I'm really grateful for, and I'm a catalyst. I'm not going to tell people what to do or not to do. And if I have a recommendation, it comes from different voices that I bring forward to other people, especially in my Creative Capital workshops. I'm a catalyst for that. And it's my job, too, to make connections, because and share as much as possible, because the stronger that you do, the stronger our community is. At least that's been my experience. And I can only base that in other people's experience. But I mean, if someone says you should do this, where does that come from, right? Where does it come from? And even if it came from a trusted person, they have a different bias, right? And we have one short life. And I think we have a say in how we want to live it. And this also gets into policy making. It gets into how foundations, I think, have to speak differently. For example, there's no such thing as a day job, because artists bring their lives with them because they're still artists in whatever they choose. So the language has to be different, especially language has to be different in how we see people of different genders, of course, and DEI work, and the things that we're doing at Chautauqua. So I always say at the Chautauqua Visual Arts in our School of Art residency program, we are very diverse, but we're not just diverse in the people we bring in, we're diverse in the pedagogy. We're diverse in how we create space for others to be able to share, to express themselves. Just because someone's not putting something on their studio wall doesn't mean they're less of an artist. So I feel like the way we think, the way we speak, the way we can insert ourselves in community and policy making, could create different ways of looking at things. It's also profitability. People are stupid in the way that they can't reach for artists and how they can see things and problem solve in order to be able to fund their lives too. So, all the evidence is there, and that's why I did these books. They're right in there. They're in the books. And my next book is Last Artist Standing. Oh my God, I can't wait to get it done. Artists over 50. Hello. So it's like, they are badasses and very, very opinionated. Wait till that book comes out. I hear it in, like recommend. I would recommend from my experience. But also I just say that I'm going to give you things to choose from. Even when I teach at SVA students, I always say to them, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to share with you in the service of teaching. And I can direct you, but I think good pedagogy is asking a lot of questions, not necessarily a top-down pedagogy, which also had to do with segmenting painting, drawing, sculpture in division of media towards the market. There are so many artists who don't fall into those categories. So how do they sustain their lives? How do they integrate in society? When they're ousted because they're not, showing in museums. And then how do museums share that privilege with other people?
Well, I'm also interested, you had that chart of
The relationships.
well, that's a very, just judging you, and as a catalyst and a person who very much speaks from the heart.
Thank you.
Where did you get that?
My therapist.
I'm an artist. I'm also an acupuncturist.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and that chart is about the heart. It's about, who you let into the inner sanctum and how to define that. And it was just very interesting to see it manifested. And your whole talk is about that. You as a heart person.
Oh, thanks. Oh, thanks. Thank you. That means so much to me, and my heart's hurting. Well, thank you. That chart I use professionally, though, because artists they can, I know we're going over time, but I have a great example that I don't want to show on camera, but or share on camera. But I have a great example. I'll just say this without naming organizations. If you have a problem with, let's say, an organization that's doing something against your values, would you ever work with them? even if they offered you $1 million, which isn't really that much money relatively, it would go away fairly quickly, but to artists it's a lot of money. To me, it's a ton of money. Would you then work with them? Because then that's a part of your life, but also it's a part of your resume, it's a part of your record, and if you're out there in the world, all these people, the people here at the Neuberger, they're part of my life because I had this amazing privilege to show here. And so how then does that manifest? Also, how do you honor your work if you're working with somebody that you don't respect? And then also, do you then take the gig and then from the inside out, which I love to do with nonprofits and also nonprofits who agree, we have the similar values, but also academia, in making change through compromise. So I had a conversation too the other day with a bunch of artists, and somebody asked me, what is vision? Vision is big picture, but tiny little steps in the big picture. At least that's how I see it. Because you have to learn from other people, hear people, listen, and make decisions together, right, in order to get that big vision. So it's tough, but to have those questions and those problems, those are first world problems. So I think that's how I look at things, seriously. Like, and ever since then, and, you know, even like Dee Dee Young gave me this opportunity to be here, and I still thank her to this day. And I still have those catalogs, and I share them all the time because I bought a ton of them, and I still have them, and I try to keep that alive. Thank you. Yeah.
You briefly mentioned the book that you wrote a while back. Could you tell me the name of it?
Oh.
A short synopsis?
Sure. Living and Sustaining a Creative Life. Living and Sustaining a Creative Life. And there's a sequel to that too, another book as Artist as Culture Producer. And the first book and the second book are essays by 40 working artists. And they share in there just short essays that start a conversation about the reality of what it means to be an artist today. It's very far away from the idea of a lot of people thinking that they're Vincent van Gogh in an attic and they never come out until they have a show, and then they get driven back and somehow they get food to live, and they never take showers, can't speak in completed sentences that I'm trying to do, and not look like this. So it's like, that's the first thing, is the myth needs to be broken in order to get the respect that we have, and also to get back into education. The idea that artists, the way they think, and just to enable to share those things, they're some of the most smartest, generous people in the world. That then in education, to have those seeds so young people can think, wow, no, I can take risks because I've done this in making art and expressing myself. But somehow we've lost that. Thank you. Thank you all so much for listening to me. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, everybody. Thank you all so much. What was your name? Beverly. And what is your name? Nice to meet you. And your names? Andrea. Lou. Nice to meet you both. I think I've met you guys before. Have I not? No? Oh, maybe in my dreams, but nice to meet you.